Welcome back to the show. Now, I am super excited today to have Nicki Williams with us. Now, she is the founder of Happy Hormones for Life, and she's a nutritionist. So, after failing to find any medical help for her symptoms of exhaustion, weight gain, and hormone issues herself in her early 40s, Nicki discovered that she could turn things around using diet, lifestyle, and natural supplements. So I am super excited to welcome Nicki to the show. Welcome, Nicki.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Happy to be here.
I'm very excited to have you because I think this is something that a lot of my listeners are struggling with, not only going through a tough breakup, going through all the emotional roller coaster associated with that, maybe dealing with a toxic partner, and then on top of that, hormones. And I think midlife is especially tricky. So let's start with talking a little bit about your story, Nicki, because I think it's fascinating how you got into doing this work.
Yeah, so I was in my early 40s when this world opened up to me, or, I didn't invite it in, but I was in a corporate role, very, as a lot of women are, stressed with the work, spinning a load of plates, had two young children, and I ended up sort of really feeling like the day-to-day struggle was real. It was like a massive long to-do list. I was having exhausted, pretty much, loads of brain fog at work that was affecting my performance at work, but my mood particularly was really bad, and it was up and down a lot, but it was generally just really snappy and irritable, which obviously I took it out on my family, my kids. I didn't have a lot of patience and tolerance, and my husband got it as well. So I wasn't the most popular at the time. And I really didn't like who I'd become, because that wasn't me. That wasn't who I didn't have kids to go and, be snappy with them. So I wanted to be fun mum. And I often, just got called grumpy mum. So that wasn't really nice.
No.
I didn't know what was going on because I didn't know anything about health or hormones or what was happening to me. I was in the corporate world. So I went to my doctor. Long story short, he gave me a prescription for Prozac because obviously there were some tears in my 10-minute appointment. And he gave me this prescription. And bear in mind, this is 15 odd years ago. So back then, doctors weren't really up to speed on perimenopause or menopause or anything like that. And I didn't know what was going on. So I looked at this prescription thinking I had depression. I was like, it didn't really sit with me. I'd never had it before. It didn't run in my family. But luckily enough for me, my dad was a doctor and he specialised in women's hormones. And I'm like, I don't really know what he does, but, he helps women with period problem. I don't know. Anyway, so I rang him up and said, look, Dad, this is what's going on. And doctor wants to put me on, he thinks it's depression. He said, no, you've got no history of depression. It's not that. It'll be perimenopause. And I went, peri what? This thing that word didn't exist back then. I just heard the menopause bit and I thought he was going crazy. I was 42, not, 60 or whatever. I didn't know anything about the menopause, but I knew I wasn't there. And I had young kids and I had my periods, and, So I said, I don't know what you're talking about. Tell me what that all means. So, he gave me the education that I didn't get at school or from my doctor or from any magazine or anything. I didn't know at all what was going on in my body over 40 and what this perimenopause thing. So I understood all of that. I took it all on and I was really fascinated. Fascinated, first of all, because I just thought it was just mind-blowing, all this stuff that was happening. And secondly, I kind of got angry as well because I thought, hang on, this is happening in my body. Yeah, how do I not know about this? And how do my friends all suffering with the same sort of things, how do they not know about this? And why aren't we told? Why don't we have education and tools around this so that we can help ourselves? What's going on? Why do we want to just first-line treatment, antidepressants? It just didn't make any sense. So I got quite angry about that. And the more I delved into it, the more all these light bulbs were going off. And I just thought, this is what I'm meant to be doing. I mean, corporate was fine. I had a decent job, well paid, lots of responsibility, but it didn't really fulfill me. And I thought maybe this is what I'm meant to be doing because I come from a long line of doctors and nurses in my family and I never wanted to go down that route. But I think it was more out of rebellion than anything else. So this was a nice way of coming back to that kind of trait, I guess, in the family without going through the difficulty of being a doctor and all the training that you have to do for that. But I did have to do 4 years of nutrition training, which I did following this educational piece from my dad, and came out of that in 2014 and started Happy Hormones for Life. And back then, nobody was talking about hormones. Nobody's talking about perimenopause. Nobody really understood what was going on. So my job back then was education and really helping women to navigate this period, but also really give them tools, practical tools, to be able to control what was going on and really feel better than they were doing, without necessarily having to go on medication that they might not have needed. So that was really my role back then, and that was sort of, that's so 10 years ago. 10 years we've been helping women through our clinic. And then what happened
was... Is that what your clinic specialises in then, helping women with hormones? So is that, this might be a dumb question, but is that menopause, perimenopause as well, or can it be separate to that? Or was your case hormones, was it related to the perimenopause?
So we really, so hormones, affect a woman from puberty up until post-menopause. So, that whole period of, your teens up until your 50s is when hormones are kind of in control of everything, and you're going through this monthly cycle every month, and it's affecting lots of different aspects of your health, as well as how you feel and how you're performing, etc. So there's a whole lot in there in hormone health that is huge. And we really focused on balancing hormones for women so that they could get through any of those stages. But the majority of our clients were coming from their 40s, midlife women who were going through that tricky perimenopausal stage, because that's when the symptoms were really shouting at them and really starting to affect their lives in such a way that they couldn't they needed to get that support to be able to function and to carry on. So those were the bulk of our clients, the perimenopausal ones. And that's when I wrote my first book as well. It was called It's Not You, It's Your Hormones, because I really felt that education piece needed to be told, that and in the hands of more people, so that we could not everyone could come and afford to work with us. So the book allowed us to explain things in a way that everyone could access.
It's a great title. It's Not You, It's Your Hormones, because I think for most of us, we think we're going a bit mad, or we notice things and go, why is my memory so bad? Or, why can't I concentrate? Or why am I so angry today? And those sort of things. It's something that if we're never taught about it, which we're not, why are we not taught about this at school? Why is there such a gap missing? I think a lot of women don't even understand their monthly cycle in any detail. They just sort of know what happens, but not what's actually going on in their body every stage of that cycle.
Yeah. And
why is it, do you think, that we don't know?
Well, I think probably the education curriculum was probably created by a man, maybe.
Yeah, probably.
As is most of the medical training, because they don't get a lot of training on women's health or the menopause or cycles or whatever. So it's very hard. We're still catching up on all of that. There has been some progress in terms of education, in that menopause is going to be taught in schools, and that was decided only last year.
Great.
But it is progressing, so there is movement on it. And nowadays, with social media, with the internet, there is a mass of information on menopause. You just got to kind of know what to trust and what not to trust, and then
that's the challenge.
Yeah, with lots of information comes that overwhelm and a bit of confusion, because there is a lot of conflicting stuff going on. But if you can get people that you trust, then that's a good place to start. But we've got the more information is good. It means that women can access support much more quickly than they used to be able to. I had my dad to help me, but if I hadn't, I don't know where I'd have gone. There wasn't anything around back then. And the NHS was woeful in its provision of any kind of help with that. So we're in a good place. We've come a long way, but there's still a lot of challenges.
Yeah. Okay. So thinking about women as we get older, what do you think are the major challenges that we all face?
Right. So when we've got through that perimenopausal journey, which actually for some women can last a very, very long time. So if I just go back to what that perimenopause is. So when in your sort of around your mid-30s generally is when your egg reserve starts to decline and you might skip ovulation. And then when you skip ovulation, so we might not ovulate every month basically, and because of that our hormone production starts to change. So we carry on producing estrogen, but our progesterone levels drop. So the gap in the estrogen progesterone ratio starts to widen, and it starts to go on a bit of a roller coaster. And it can be very, very gradual. So you might not notice symptoms until your early, mid, sometimes late 40s, sometimes even later, depends on all sorts of different things. But you can get symptoms in your mid to late 30s. So this journey, if you start to get symptoms from mid 30s and you don't finish your period until the average age is around 52, is potentially 17 years of this kind of up and down, hormone fluctuating kind of roller coaster. So for some women, that is a massive chunk of their lives. So it can be awful. But for other women, they'll either sail through or they'll have different ratios of symptoms from, and it can be quite mild, and you're fine. It's the debilitating ones that are particularly bad, and the emotional side, the psychological symptoms of menopause are often kind of forgotten, but these are the ones that can really affect us the most. We know about hot flushes, but the anxiety, the brain fog, the low mood, the feeling not confident, all of that can be way more difficult to deal with than actually dealing with a hot flush or issues with sleep. So by the time we get to our early 50s, generally, when our periods stop, that we've been on this it can be quite a turbulent time, and it's a relief when our periods finally stop, so we don't have to go through that monthly kind of tumble dryer of hormones. We're out the other side, and then we can kind of get a bit of calm and freedom from that. But unfortunately, there are other issues awaiting us on that, on the other side.
Okay, well, let's just go back for a second to the perimenopause. What can people do then to help themselves through that perimenopausal stage?
Oh, there's such a huge amount you can do, because hormones they need you to have a decent diet. So they need good nutrients to be able to be produced properly, to work properly, to be stored, transported, eliminated, all that stuff. So you've got to have a good nutrient dense diet. And what I mean by that is not low calories, maybe the way you want to go to lose weight, but it's not going to be enough nutrients in there. So we've got to get lots of real unprocessed whole foods, and lots of protein and fiber and all that good stuff that we know about. And then hormones also need you to be quite calm. So they need a calm environment, because when you are stressed, cortisol is one of your main dominant hormones, right? So when I talk about cortisol a lot, because when we talk about menopause, we're often talking about the sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, but cortisol is you don't get that in an HRT medication. Cortisol is your main stress hormone, and if you're producing it a lot of the time, all the time, because you're stressed out, and then or you're not producing enough because you're too stressed out, then it can have a really dominant effect on all your other hormones. So what that means is it can make your perimenopausal symptoms a whole lot worse. So after 10 years of watching women in clinic, I started off thinking, because I'm a nutritionist, I'm starting off thinking the diet is the most important thing. But after 10 years of seeing women in clinic, stress is the number one indicator of how bad you'll go through menopause.
Which is a challenge for those people listening who are going through a divorce at the moment,
Yes.
because there's not a lot you can do about that. And sometimes, especially if it's a toxic relationship breakdown, that can be stressful for a long period of time. So how can people help themselves through that?
Yeah, and emotional stress is as severe as physical stress. So we talk about physical stresses on the body, dehydration, bad food, gut health issues, whatever, right? And also perimenopause, you're changing hormones, surgery, illness, all that is the kind of physical stresses. But emotional stresses are very destructive on your internal systems. Not only do they mess with your hormones, but they don't do well with longevity. That you don't age well with those, because they tend to switch on your pro-aging genes. So yes, emotional stresses, and at a time when midlife women may be going through relationship struggles, job changes, grief, health issues, kids, whether they're empty nesting or still got younger kids because they've had kids or they haven't got kids and they're emotionally stressed about that, or aging parents. We've got the whole lot going on in this midlife maelstrom that we're in, right? So emotional stress has an impact on menopause and aging. So that's something that we really need to get support with. Now, if it's some kind of trauma related, there's loads of therapies for that. If it's there's support and therapy for kind of everything that as you know, there's coaching support and everything that women tend to be the main things women tend to be going through. So definitely get support. And for me, self-care is just a non-negotiable. So you've got to get that into your routine every single day. So make it non-negotiable, block it out, put it as in like it's a meeting for yourself in your diary. So it doesn't get moved.
What does self-care mean to you?
Yeah, and it's a word that gets bandied about everywhere, and it means different things to different people. Some people might think, well, we're just going to have a bath, or I go on a spa day or something. It's whatever it is for you that allows you to relax, and that's why it's got such a broad meaning to it in my view. It's for me, it's getting outside and going for a half-hour walk in nature. I mean, the weather at the moment is amazing, so getting that sun on your skin, getting daylight in the morning is so important, because that stimulates serotonin, your happy hormone, and that then turns into melatonin at night, which is your sleep hormone. So getting daylight on your skin in the morning, even if you just open, it doesn't have to be sunny, just open a window and just get daylight. It tells your body to make serotonin, and that will help you sleep later as well as improve your mood. So just something as basic as that, to me, is self-care.
Yeah.
But if you're rushing around and you forget to do that, that for me that becomes part of my habit. So I go downstairs in the morning and I get my coffee and I take my coffee to the window. If it's raining, then I'll look out and look up and look at those clouds just to get that light onto me. But often we'll go into an office, and sometimes I'll forget to do that. I'll come into my office and it's pretty dark. I'm north facing, so I don't really see much daylight, and I can completely forget to do that, and it does have an impact. I mean, other things as well, music might be your thing. You just want to put a playlist on and just listen to it. Meditation, mindfulness, anything that reading a book has been shown to drop your cortisol. Anything that de-stresses you is good. But you kind of have to do it regularly every day, even if it's just 10 minutes. If you can just carve out 10 minutes for yourself, that is going to have a positive impact, and then you can try and build on it from there.
Are there any particular foods that are calming and that are nourishing for you? Because I think when we're stressed, we tend to go for the foods that aren't so good, so high sugar, like carbs, maybe just comfort eating. But is there anything we could swap those maybe unhealthier snacks out for, just to help us keep a bit more of a balance? Because what you eat actually has a massive impact on how you're feeling, right?
Huge. Yeah, it really does. And what you eat goes, those nutrients go to your brain. You have to be feeding your brain, and the brain can, if it's well fed and nourished, can help you deal with stress better, and it can help you think better. It's going to improve your mood. All of that stuff, get rid of brain fog, and also eventually, help you sleep, which we know is so important and so difficult when you're stressed. So foods for that, all the good stuff. I mean, so we've got to be looking at taking the sugar out as much as possible. So going for if you're a sugar head, then going for fruit rather than sugary snacks. And always trying to have protein with that. So if I'm going for a snack just to get me through, I might go for half an apple with some peanut butter, with a handful of nuts with it, because that slows the release of the glucose into the system. So you're trying to balance your blood sugar. And there's, if you have to snack and snacking's not the best for you, but if you want a snack because you're stressed and you just need something to kind of do, or relieve that stress a little bit, those kind of protein based snacks are going to be better for you than reaching for the carbs, or having some if you have to have the carbs, having some protein and healthy fat with that will really, really help stop your blood sugar going up and down. Because the minute you're on that blood sugar roller coaster, you've had a carby sugary snack and then you're down again, those lows will really hit you. You're going to feel more moody, foggy, tired, and also you're going to be fat storing a lot as well, so you're going to have that weight gain to worry about, which stresses us out even more, doesn't it?
It does, it does. Okay, so sounds like a fun period, but okay, getting through perimenopause and
Yeah.
then life after menopause. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I had developed this amazing toolkit for dealing with perimenopause. I had my happy hormone code that I was, pretty not religious about, but, I had an 80-20 balance around it, because I think that's really important as well. You have a little bit of wiggle room for things that you love, because deprivation does no one any good either, and that just stresses you out even more. So I had this toolkit, and then my period stopped at 52. And when that happened, everything changed. My body changed. And I was so used to feeling okay that suddenly everything went out. Not everything went out the window, but I started to get really, really brutal night sweats. So like every 15 minutes, a tidal wave of sweat, and I'd wake up, and it massively disturbed my sleep, which I, really, really need and love, and it was really awful, just waking up sweating, dripping. So that plus some other issues, I had more brain fog, and I had really vaginal dryness. I know we don't like to talk about that stuff, but it's really, really bad if you're in a loving relationship and it hurts. That is just like, for a lot of women, that's just like the worst, and for me it was really bad. So
And how common are these symptoms after menopause? Because you hear about during, but not so much after. How common are they?
It so depends on where your hormones sort of sit. So if you're on HRT, you can get a lot of relief from that if you're on the right HRT in the right dose and the right format. I wasn't, because I was trying to do things naturally, until it got to that stage when I thought, hang on a minute. And I spoke to my dad, and he said, yeah, I think you're going to need some extra help here. My mum had just been diagnosed with osteoporosis as well, which we know she hadn't been on HRT since her hysterectomy. So we know that was caused by low estrogen. So I was really keen on doing what was right for me. And I think that's really important for all women, not to be anti this or pro that, or, this is the only way to do it, because every woman's going to be different. And for me, I had my natural toolkit that was working until it kind of wasn't. And then I had to add in some extra help. And for me, that was body identical HRT. So the gel and the progesterone, which took away those night sweats, which for me was it was priceless, because I got my sleep back. Everything else, all those other symptoms helped as well. So I was able to kind of just add that in. The other things I tweaked as well, things like I added more protein into my diet, because the muscle loss as you go through post-menopause speeds up, and you need more protein. And I also really massively reduced the alcohol as well. So I now drink very, very few and far between, just because post-menopause, it just doesn't do anything for you. So there were a few little tweaks I had to make to my perimenopausal toolkit, and HRT was a big one, because we've got these other challenges ahead of us. It's not just hormones anymore. So in perimenopause, you're really looking at balancing those hormones to make you feel good. Post-menopause, we've got, so the average life expectancy of a woman is in her mid-80s. So if my period stopped at 52, I'm looking at 30 plus years if I'm lucky, which is a third of your life, right? But in that time, there are the landscape is different. So we've got, bones that we need to look after, brain health, heart health. We've got to look after our immune systems, as well as making sure our hormones are still okay. So there's these other things that we need to be focusing on that are just as important.
Wow. Okay. Sounds a little bit depressing, Nicki, doesn't it? Are there any upsides to any of this?
Yeah, massive upsides, I think. And it's very important when we talk about menopause, not to focus on all the negative. We have to know the risks, we have to know the reality. But I'm worried about the menopause conversation at the minute, like really scaring younger women and thinking they don't want to go near that, because it's too much. And with with all that new information, that can be the result. And it's unfortunate, because I think actually post-menopause has a whole lot to offer. as I said, it's a third of your life, and you may be coming out of a toxic relationship, or a relationship that you might be going into a different one, or being on your own for a while. The kids may have left. Things are changing. It can be a very different kind of landscape post menopause, but a very brilliant chance actually to create something new out of that. And I really do think that it can be an incredibly positive experience for a lot of women. One of the most important things about that is to have the right mindset and the attitude, and not be seduced by society's view of women aging, which is awful. We are told that we are invisible, we're unworthy, that we're irrelevant, that we don't have anything to offer or give to society anymore. We just pretty much, left on the dump.
Well, not all of us, and I think there's a lot. I mean, obviously you're out there doing some great stuff, and I think this is the time. And a lot of my coaching is all about taking your power back and saying, right, okay, what can I do now to turn this around? And yes, I might be struggling with my divorce or my menopause, or something's come up which is stressing me out, but what's good about this? How do I find a way through? How do I take my power back and charge forward? And I think things are changing, and it's really what you create. We can live in the world that has been designed, as you say, predominantly by men, predominantly with rules that don't really help us women that much. But then we can go out there and stand up and shine our light bright and say, do you know what? Screw you, this is my motto. So
I agree 100%. And that is why I wrote the book, because I really think that, it's up to us to do that and change the narrative around what we've been told by society for ages. And, a lot of women feel like that initially, but with a positive mindset and doing things their way, we can completely change that. And we're seeing role models doing that all the time, so the number of over 50s women really killing it are increasing, and so that's where we need to be taking our inspiration from. I totally agree with that. Yeah,
absolutely. My training school I set up to teach people how to become breakup and divorce coaches, and it's full of over 700 coaches in 30 different countries now who are turning their pain into their superpower. And a lot of us are going through perimenopause, menopause, so that is all part of the journey. So I think it's really good advice. And I love the advice about your diets and trying to create that calm environment. It's not always easy when you're dealing with stress, but I think if you're part of a community like our coaching community, or if you're part of, if you've got a clinic support like you have, or coaching support on your diet, I think that really helps to have those pockets of sanity and calm, even if everything can't be calm, because I think asking for everything to be calm, especially for my audience, might be a tough one, but just pockets are enough, right, to help you stabilize.
Oh, completely. Yeah, you can't stop life being stressful. It's always going to throw stuff at you, right? But if you've got some tools to be able to deal with that, and increase your resilience through how you're looking after yourself, that is the main thing. That's what's under your control. And if you can get your thoughts a little bit more reframed into something more positive for whatever you can in your control, that is going to be hugely advantageous as well, because how we think of ourselves and how we think about aging has a physical effect on our bodies, through those hormones, through those thoughts, because they transfer into different hormones and different feelings, and that affects your physical health and how well you age. So it's so important to be kind to yourself, to think nice thoughts as much as possible. And if that's like just looking in the mirror and telling yourself you look good today, that's going to be hugely important. And yeah, I know it's difficult because our bodies are changing and we're changing and circumstances are changing. But if, like you said, if we can find the glimmer in each situation and be grateful as well. Gratitude is such an important thing, practice, because there's always something to be grateful for. There's a load of, you might be going through a tough time, but there's something that you can pin on that you can be grateful for, even if it's just shelter or a nice meal or, a nice walk in the sun.
Always something. So where can people find you, Nicki, if they want to find out more about what you're doing and learn more about what you've been talking about today, which has been fascinating?
Well, the new book, Life After Menopause, is on Amazon and all the usual links, and also through my website, happyhormonesforlife.com. You'll find everything there. There's loads of free stuff, and also details of how to get in touch with us.
Brilliant. happyhormonesforlife.com. I love that. It's really catchy and does what it says on the tin, so I think it's fabulous. I have one last question for you, Nicki, that I ask all my guests, which is obviously, you know, my podcast is called Heartbreak to Happiness. So what is happiness for you?
Do you know, I'm quite simple. Connection is for me is the most happiness. Feeling connected to my family, my friends, my nature, food, some kind of spirituality. I do a little bit of meditation. I'm not particularly good at it just yet, but I'm really trying. But connection is really key. I think if you feel connected, then you know it feels like you can do anything. You can face anything and deal with it.
Absolutely. I think human connection, you're right, is up there and one of the most important things, most important values for most humans. So yeah, I love that. I love it. And simple is good. I think that is the best way forward. Keep it simple. We need to keep the environment calm. So simple is good. But thank you so much for joining me today. I mean, fascinating. I've definitely learned something myself today. And I know people listening would have found comfort with some of your tips there, and just having a bit more understanding about what's going on actually empowers you to be able to take a bit more control, doesn't it? So definitely. Thank you, Nicki, for coming on and for being such a fabulous guest.
Thanks so much for having me.
That's it for today's episode. I look forward to you joining me next time.